Hey, good afternoon. You're listening to the Ask Dr. Ernst show. My name is Dr. Aaron Ernst. I'm here in the studio with special guest, Dr. Chris Demczar.
Yeah, super excited to be here.
He is our lead associate clinician in our Charlotte clinic, and today is the final day of our episode in our series on cardiovascular health, heart health. And because of several games that have come up, we are going to do today a summary of everything. So think of this as like the cheat sheet heart health guide. If you want to know how do I find out if my heart's healthy for real, we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about blood pressure, cholesterol, the two big, I'll call them links to heart disease. You know, like, oh my gosh, our medical professionals will say, if your blood pressure's high and your cholesterol's high, you're like a ticking time bomb. And we know that he's shaking his head no. We know that not to be the truth.
Right.
But we have to talk about that. Like,
That's
how
right.
come we've been lied to for so many years? We're going to talk about the best at-home test that many of you can do right now. It's like $45 if you don't have one of these monitors. How to find out if you have heart disease at home.
Yeah.
And the test that you should ask during Heart Health Month with your MD.
That's right.
That is actually in science proven and shown to be a better predictor of your risks for heart disease.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about all that today. So as we begin our show, just welcome to our Fox Sport listeners. I know Dr. Chris I think you've been on our show once before.
Yep.
And so we want to welcome him for spending time today to be here on a Saturday,
Absolutely.
just sharing love and passion from the functional chiropractic side.
That's right.
And as you guys know, we are giving away, today's the last day to get it, our Heart Health Heal Thyself ebook. It is roughly, I think, 25, 26 pages of everything you need. I think it would be technically like a guide. This guidebook will tell you how to lower your blood pressure, how to lower your cholesterol, how to lower your triglycerides, how to clear out an arrhythmia, how to solve a heart health issue, and it has everything in it. Bonus material, including heart health foods and the herbs that help to lower blood pressure. We have the at-home test and even how to read the at-home test in here.
Yeah, and I was going to say
tons of stuff.
It's really broken down step by step. So you're not just guessing through all this information and go, well, there's all this great stuff, but where do I start?
Correct.
You just have the opportunity to say, oh, I need to start here, and then you take this path, and then that helps you figure out what you need to do.
Exactly.
You take those action steps, and you see the results.
Nailed it. So if you want this ebook, two ways to do that. On our live streams, down or up somewhere, there's a link to register for the Heart Health Summit that is on the 12th of November, which is, I think, like a week or so away?
That's right.
And
super exciting.
You can also text your name and the word heart and your email to 704-906-2094. Like somewhere on the screen, we have a new video software. Like somewhere around here, you guys should see where you can send the text. But it's the word heart and name and email. And boom, you instantly get the ebook and you instantly get registered for the Heart Health Summit. So let's go into this, if you would. For today, Dr. Chris.
Yeah, let's do it.
What's just globally, let's talk about this, the big issue with medical tests and their likelihood of showing you your risk for heart disease? Like, let's talk first blood pressure, then we'll do cholesterol.
Yeah. So when it comes to blood pressure is not a very good predictor of heart disease at all. In fact, blood pressure is a better indicator that there's something going on with either your digestive tract and your ability to detox from what you're eating or other toxins that are in your body, or it's something related to an issue with your nervous system. So there's some level of interference in your nervous system that's going to create a change chemically that's going to lead to the blood pressure changing. Because if your blood pressure is high, do you think your body's doing that because it thinks it's the wrong thing to do? No. Your body's doing it because it thinks it's the right thing to do. It's trying to move more blood to a specific place in your body so that it can help clear something out or detox from something, or it's getting a signal to do so. So it's not doing anything that it thinks is wrong. And you've got to recognize that your body is smart. It's designed to heal. You've got to find the real issue of what's going on to cause that blood pressure to increase.
And yet that statement, though, is so profound because most people would disagree with you and say, no, my blood pressure is an issue of what I'll call a problem. Like the blood pressure is the issue. This is why my doctor says immediately, emergency, we must put you on a statin. We have to, or not a statin, like a blood pressure pill. We got to bring your pressure down because, watch this, ready? you have higher risks of stroke. You have higher risk of an aneurysm in your brain. There is connections between uber high blood pressure and physical damage to the heart. Makes sense.
It does.
Kidney problems, eye issues, like, all kinds of problems stem from having uncontrolled high blood pressure.
Right.
So you're saying it's a good thing to have high blood pressure?
And I like that you use the word uncontrolled, right? Because there's different levels to this blood pressure thing. There's blood pressure when everybody's blood pressure fluctuates. You can go and exercise profusely where you're sweating like crazy. You just did the hardest 1-hour workout of your life. Is your blood pressure going to be low? No, your blood pressure is going to be sky high because you got to get the oxygen to the working muscle cells. So I like that you use that word that it's uncontrolled. A lot of times, to get to the point where it's uncontrolled, you've had to go through a phase where there was controlled blood pressure, and then that balance of keeping your blood pressure within a specific range, you lost that a little bit, and okay, so now you've got to increase the range of what normal blood pressure is for you, and then it's going outside of that range a little bit more, and your body changes that normal balance again, and that blood pressure keeps going higher and higher and higher with a little bit larger change or difference in what should be from normal, and before you know it, your blood pressure is uncontrolled. But listen to this statistic. 9 out of 10 Americans is estimated to have blood pressure and by a medical doctor need blood pressure medication by the age of 65.
So like if they walk in and they're 65 and older, it's like a 90% likelihood they're going to be told your blood pressure's high, you need this med.
Exactly.
But help me with this because I'm still confused. You're saying that our listener out there who has high blood pressure and is being medicated for it is being lied to in that their blood pressure elevation is not a bad thing. It's actually somehow a good thing for them.
Right.
And I know where you're going with this, but explain this to me. Why is it a good thing to have high blood pressure then?
Yeah, that's the body's best response to try to get oxygen to whatever tissues are needed.
Now you hit it. Okay, so listen, if you have high blood pressure, it's the equivalent of a fever. We would never blame a fever for being the reason you got sick in the first place. We would say, wait a minute, this fever is there because there is an infection, and your innate system of your body is saying, raise the temperature, burn it, kill it, destroy it. And
so smart.
What you would see then is a reduction in bacterial or viral counts.
Right.
And then as the load goes down, the fever goes down. So let's talk about the most common things that cause elevated blood pressure. You hit the first one. We're just not getting enough oxygen into the cells of our body. And because every cell has to breathe as well, what happens if O2 doesn't go into the internal environment of a cell?
Yeah, if there's no O2, guess what? You've got no fuel. If you've got no fuel, you've got no energy. So if you have no energy, can your cell work? Can it do its job? No.
Yeah, so productivity of the cell goes down.
Way down. And then
signals sent to the brain, and the brain says, push harder, heart. We need more air in those cells. And the heart goes, you got it.
Right, high blood pressure.
Yeah, so number one is lack of oxygen. But what happens in the cell because of the lack of oxygen, which is cause number 2?
Yeah, so this is the back end of it. And that's when you do make energy, there's a byproduct of that. So the cell has to make CO2 as a byproduct of making energy for whatever the process is. And imagine that you've got all this oxygen hanging out in the blood, but you can't get that oxygen into the cell, and the cell's got all the CO2. The CO2 can't get out of the cell, so then you can exhale it, right? Because that's the primary way
the blood
get
into the
rid
lungs,
of
correct,
CO2 from our body. Yep. And so you've just got all the CO2 hanging out in the cell that's super toxic, and so the body again goes, whoa, got to raise that blood pressure, try to get the CO2 out.
So what you're saying is people with high blood pressure don't have enough air in their blood. Or actually, no, they have a lot of air in their blood, but they don't have enough air in their cells.
Right.
They have lower than normal amounts of carbon dioxide in their blood.
Yes.
And they have more of it in their cells.
Exactly.
You're going to detect this on a basic lab. It's called the anion gap. We can see if you're in a state of metabolic acidosis. But I'm also hearing you say their cells are carbonated.
Yeah.
Like
sense.
seltzer water carbonation.
Right.
And that means it's acidic then because carbon dioxide is technically an acid.
An acid, yes.
And here's the secret killer then. And why so many pre-diabetics and diabetics have high blood pressure. Not because they come like Jane and Jack going up the hill. It's literally a downstream effect. You lose oxygenation transfer into the cell. The cell starts to accumulate carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide acidifies the cell. It goes hypoxic or anaerobic without oxygen. And then now Glucose is not burned efficiently, and the energy byproduct is known as lactic acid, and you get this acid buildup, which creates acidosis. And then guess what? The body's like, oh my God, like the cell's about to die. Really push hard to get the oxygen, and naturally the pressure goes up.
Exactly. Because what's on the flip side of this high blood pressure not working? The cell dying.
Which obviously the body does not want to happen. It will sacrifice health functions like high blood pressure to make you stay alive.
That's right.
And this is why you're saying the blood pressure is a good thing then.
Yes, absolutely. It is a protective mechanism to ensure that the cells don't just start dying off. Can you imagine if your liver cells just started dying off because they couldn't produce energy? Could you imagine if all the muscle cells in your legs just started dying off because they couldn't produce energy? How scary would that be? And so for it to ever get to that point, that is like next to death, basically.
But yet, guess what? If you're medicating your blood pressure, you're at that stage where your cells are going, please, for the love of God, we just need air. And your doctor's like, we don't like the high blood pressure. That could cause heart attack, stroke, death, early, this, that, the other. But here is said pill. Now let's go super deep. The pill they give you hints that they know what's causing your high blood pressure, yet in their world, not the real world. And I'll give you an example of that. Medically, blood pressure is taken care of with several types of medications, okay? Number one, they have a diuretic. And let's talk about diuretics, because what would be the number one way that they get your pressure to drop? Well, it's a closed system, guys. Yep. You're a bunch of tubes with fluid inside of it. So if I could decrease the volume of the fluid in a closed system, doesn't work for open systems, but closed, and thank God you're a closed system. You're not leaking blood like every day. That'd be a problem. So if I decrease the volume, I can shut the pressure off.
Right.
So they give you a pill called a diuretic, which makes you urinate more fluid out. Will that drop pressure sometimes?
Oh, yeah.
But now watch this, though. The innate system of your body's like, why did the blood volume just drop? Kidneys retain sodium, keep the in, and then the kidney's like, I can't. I've got this drug forcing it out. So the brain's going to go, heart, man, you're going to have to work harder now. And that's why one diuretic turns into two, or turns into a diuretic plus an ACE inhibitor or a calcium channel blocker or an alpha blocker.
Right, but what you just said, so you're trying to use a medication to solve one problem. Now you've got the kidneys working overtime 24/7. And before you know it, now your kidneys, which weren't a problem at all, are starting to not be able to do what they're designed to do. And now your kidneys are starting to fail. Now your kidney cells start dying off.
And you know, like, I wonder, like, you and I would laugh at this. Like, there are people, and listen, I'm not trying to badmouth you if you're watching or listening to this, but there is no such thing as a safe medication. I don't care if it's over-the-counter Tylenol and aspirin or Advil.
Right.
No medication, man-made synthetic chemical is safe to take. Now, you take one aspirin today, you're not going to have an immediate issue. But if you take an aspirin a day because you have back pain or headaches or menstrual cycles or whatever, we know for a fact it shreds your kidneys to pieces.
Yes.
You take an acetaminophen, over-the-counter Tylenol, we know it shreds your liver to pieces. But here's the challenge, guys. The prescription medications are 1,000 times more toxic, which is why they're by prescription only.
Right.
Sort of. It also has to do with their branding and their patents and stuff, which we can talk about later. But just go ahead and try experiments, okay? But don't do this. But just use it mentally. What if I said to you, you know, like taking my one lisinopril, which is a blood pressure medication every day, is just a pain. I'd like to take all of them today so I don't have to take them every day.
Yeah.
Like, that would be insanity, first of all. You would, like, off you go, goodbye. So if I could swallow all of them today and sayonara, be with my creator, what happens at the end of the 30th day with me taking one a day?
In theory, it should be the same thing. Thank God our body's able to mitigate and kind of buffer some of that toxicity.
But that buffering is physical damage done to the cell tissues. So look, I hate to burst the bubble. The reason why most people take one med and then 5 years later 2 and 5 years later 3 for the same condition is that never solves the real reason.
Right.
It's not a diuretic issue, guys. It's an oxygenation carbon dioxide buffering issue.
Yep. And I want to close the loop on the whole diuretic thing. I call it the 3Ds and talk with patients about the 3Ds. Diuretics lead to dialysis, which leads to death.
Yeah. So then we have these things called angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, or ACE or ACEIs. And these are the ones that would say they believe the issue is you have too much of this hormone called angiotensinogen, which tightens and compresses the vasculature. So again, a closed system now, level volume, we tighten the tubes and make them smaller, pressure would go up.
Right.
And this hormone exists naturally because when you're running from a saber-toothed tiger, which we don't run from anymore, but you've got a boss barking down your neck, or your kids are yelling and screaming at you, or your husband just sent you a notification for divorce, that stress makes that hormone come out because you need high blood pressure in those minute moments of stress.
For that short period of time.
So look, in the brilliance of science, did we figure out if you block this enzyme, you can shut off angiotensinogen and angiotensin from making your vessels constrict?
Yes.
Yeah, but is that the cause of the problem? No. Then you have calcium channel blockers, which were some of the original medications. We know calcium causes a muscle to contract, and we know magnesium causes it to relax. So if I block the calcium input into the muscle cells of your heart, then I can slow down the contractions. But does this drug selectively say, hey, shoulder muscles and prostate muscles and leg muscles, you don't have to worry about this calcium block. It's just the heart that's going to deal with this? No. So when we block all calcium channels, we can cause this kind of weakness and fatigue and issues within the body.
Yes.
Maybe the pressure drops, woohoo, but that's not the issue.
Nope.
Now, I want to take like a couple seconds. Alpha blockers are brand new. And these are fascinating drugs because they claim to stimulate and change the impulses that come from your brain to your heart by stopping a specific signal that makes the heart beat faster.
Yep, as if they couldn't figure out how to get blood pressure lower with the mechanism of actions that were already existing. They had to now jump to a totally different organ system, the nervous system.
Yes, but notice again, the drugs hint to the various causes. Could you have excess calcium flowing into heart? Why would calcium go into heart, guys? It's a pH buffer. Notice it's trying to buffer the pH, okay? Diuretics. Yeah, the kidney should be able to say, red alert, we got to open up the floodgates. Angiotensinogen could be inhibited because we inhibit it all the time when we are in a relaxed meditative state.
Right.
So if you want to really solve your blood pressure, you need to do two things. One, download this ebook now for the love of God, only because this is the last week you get it for free. And by downloading the ebook, you instantly come to the webinar that we're hosting on the 12th. And we can help you solve your issues. Look, we've got a survey we send to all participants. Let us know your numbers. What's your blood pressure? What's your cholesterol? What's your sodium, potassium, chloride, and carbon dioxide? Every single one of you have had this test run. It's just your doctors don't read it to you the way that you should have it read.
Exactly.
So how do we find out about you? Just pick up the phone. Take an action, guys. It's free. The ebook is worth, I don't know, $30 at the minimum. Like, it's a very nice
50.
book.
Yep.
It shows you every single thing you need. It has infographics and guides and diets and supplements that you can start now. So the number is 704-906-2094. That's 704-906-2094. We just need the word heart with your name and email. Call or text, and bam, it's yours for free. So blood pressure really then is an issue of your metabolism.
Right.
And not enough oxygen in the blood, too much carbon dioxide in the cell, therefore not enough carbon dioxide in the blood. So you shift to this thing called metabolic acidosis. That response is the same as an infection for a fever. So what happens in an acidotic state? Blood pressure goes up. And then the ignorant MD says, oh, I'm going to blame it on your age and your belly and your bad diet and your lack of exercise, you slob. So here's pills that can make you better and have a nice day.
Yep.
So again, we got to get out of that loop.
And it's interesting too, because, I know this is a heart health webinar. So when you talk about the heart and you talk about having high blood pressure for a long period of time, what's going to happen to your heart as it's constantly trying to pump more and more and more blood out? That's where we see that the heart ventricles, the walls of the heart themselves will start to expand. They'll put more muscle down, get a little bit stronger, trying to push more blood out. And next thing you know, now your medical doctor's running a test and going, uh-oh, Dr. Ernst, you've had high blood pressure for 10 years now. It's been uncontrolled. Now look at your heart wall. It's thickening, and the heart muscle is not functioning the way it should anymore. Now you're at a super high risk for heart disease or stroke.
According to them.
Yes, according to them.
Now let's do. So we're live. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. I know you're good with math, but these numbers might get a little crazy. So what is the average healthy heartbeat at rest? Not when working out, but at rest.
Yeah, anywhere from 60 to 80 beats per minute.
So let's say 70, which is in the middle.
Perfect.
Okay. There are 70 beats per minute. So every single hour, we have 4,200 beats.
Yep.
There are 24 hours to the day. So it's 100,000 beats a day.
Yeah.
There are 7 days to the week. That's 700,005 beats a week. There are 52 weeks for the year. So there are 36,691 beats. Can you remember this? Because I'm going to show you something.
Yeah.
Just a 10 beat elevation, how much of a push does that cause?
Yeah.
So we got 36.6. We'll say 36.7. 36.7. Okay. So now I did that at 70 beats a minute. So 80, which is still considered normal,
right?
Times the 60. For the hour.
Yep, times 24.
Times 24 for the day.
Yep.
Times 7 to give me a week. Times 52 for the year. We're now at 41.9 million.
Yeah.
If I take that from 36.7, right? I think we did
right there.
that.
Yep.
So guys, that's 5 million extra beats a year. 5.2 million. And that's at the normal pulse rates.
Right.
So I want you to just grab this concept. Something as simple as a 10-point increase in pulse rate at rest puts an extra 5,200,000 beats on your heart. Now, no one has really said, like, your heart has X number of beats. Kind of like a tire, right? This tire is rated for 30,000 miles. Right. And when you hit 30,000, you need a new tire.
Right.
So your heart is like just outrageously, amazingly designed to figure that without ever stopping, it can do 3 to 5 million beats a year without even blinking an eye. But what about that heart that doesn't have to push that hard?
Exactly.
That's what we're talking about, is finding out functional relationships with your body and your heart so you can fix not just your pressure, but a heart that beats 2 million beats less a year could live another 5 or 10 when you sum up a whole lifespan's worth of yearly extra beats. Right.
It's the Lance Armstrong heart.
Yes.
At his peak, before, when he wasn't doing some of the other illegal things to try to boost his ability to perform, his resting blood pressure, certain reports came out that he had a resting heartbeat. His heart rate was 38 beats per minute to 46 beats per minute. At rest.
Yeah, because he's so efficient.
Yep.
And doesn't have an oxygenation issue. So here's a secret, guys. You could do this test right now. Take 60 seconds just to sit down and rest, do a couple deep breaths, get some sort of a finger pulse meter. Most of your watches will do it, or just old school, feel your wrist or along your neck. Count how many beats happen in 60 seconds. And if you're super, uber healthy, you should be in like the 60 to 70 range. If you're uber healthy, you'll be less than 60. Right. And if you're like the average American, a lot of our pulses are 85, 80 to 90, 100 at rest. So again, these are subtle, simple things you can do. Okay, so we talked about blood pressure being an issue with the fact the heart's working harder because there's too much oxygen in the blood, not enough oxygen in the cell, lots of carbon dioxide in the cell, not enough carbon dioxide in the blood. Right. It creates what's called an anion gap shift. Yeah, hey, last week we talked about the anion gaps. So if you want the equation, it's real simple. Go grab your basic CBC from your MD. Look at sodium, look at potassium, look at chloride, look at CO2. They're on every basic panel. Whip out a calculator, and it's sodium plus potassium minus chloride minus CO2. That number should be at the maximum like 15, 14, something like that. A lot of our patients were coming in after the show last week, and they're like, oh, mine's 18. What does it mean? Mine's 22. What does it mean? It means that you don't have enough air in your cells, and you have too much carbon dioxide. Yep. And a simple fix is just, depending upon your sodium levels, we need to do elemental sodium salts, and we need to do bicarbonate soda to just create a pH buffer of the blood. The bicarbonate will combine with water to create a carbon dioxide pull out of the cell, and it helps to reoxygenate in the blood.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of people always think, I've got to just breathe out the carbon dioxide. That's true, but you have a secondary system. Your kidneys will help to flush that out.
They will.
Through the bicarbonate, carbonic acid cycle. So there's other ways that you can help
urinate
flush that CO2
and
out as well.
We can breathe it. Okay, let's. So this is going to be like a lid blower. Like we talked about it, 2 weeks ago, but I know this one always is so hard for the average person to swallow. Here we go. Cholesterol has nothing, I repeat, nothing to do with your heart health risks. It has nothing to do with your likelihood of having a cardiovascular event. Yep. And we know this several reasons.
Stroke.
We know this because the whole, what I'll call cholesterol theory was disproven. We know this because of thousands of studies done on people who have uber high cholesterol, like the Eskimos. They eat like pounds and pounds of whale blubber as part of their standard diet. Super high in saturated fats. They should all be dead. In fact, the Eskimos should be extinct.
Right.
Because their
thriving.
Cholesterols are like 400, 500. Yep. But they, I think, if I remember right, don't even have a native word for the word heart disease.
Because it doesn't exist.
Yet, we have these uber healthy vegans who eat nothing but plants their whole life and end up having massive heart disease, severe plaquing, and strokes and heart attacks in their 30s and 40s, and they never touched an animal product to save their life.
Right.
So cholesterol has to be broken down into, is it something harmful? Does it come from our diet? Is the dietary cholesterol bad for us, like we've been told? And if it has nothing to do with it, why do we test it? And is there a way we could use your cholesterol numbers to actually look for heart disease?
Exactly. And then is there a better way to look for heart disease?
So let's first go and talk about, is cholesterol actually dangerous the way we've been told? And I'm going to say dietary because this is what they always like, oh God, don't eat cholesterol. So was there anything that talked about people who eat large amounts of cholesterol and not having heart disease that you know of?
No.
Yeah. So I read a study once that said if you actually eat 3 eggs a day, which is loaded with cholesterol, you can lower your LDL scores by like 20 or 30 points.
Right.
So wait a second, okay?
Yeah.
How come we were told dietary cholesterols cause heart disease? Well, if you eat corn-fed animal products, they've actually done studies on this, guys. It's going to blow your mind. If you eat corn-fed meat, corn-fed chicken, corn-fed beef products, corn-fed eggs, and egg products, you raise your cholesterol, and the LDLs do go up. But if you eat grass-fed products and grass-fed eggs and grass-fed butter and grass-fed this and grass-fed that, you actually lower your cholesterol.
And so what you're saying, I think this is what blows the lid off of cholesterol. Cholesterol is basically hit the veil that's hiding the true issue that is causing the bad increase in cholesterol, quote unquote.
Yep.
It's inflammation.
And guess what? Just like blood pressure being high cholesterol tells us it's responding to something, just like the blood pressure is responding to the lack of carbon dioxide in the blood and too much carbon dioxide within the cells. Your cholesterol responds to too many toxins in your liver and too much inflammation in your body. So if you're highly inflamed and highly toxic, I would expect your cholesterol levels to be high because you use cholesterol to detox.
Boom.
Go figure.
So it's really the inflammation that's causing all of the health and all of the heart problems.
That's
not
correct.
The cholesterol at all.
Oh, listen. So I have a quote. I want to see if I can find it. This is going to blow your mind. It was by a former American Cardiology, College of Cardiology president. Okay, listen to this. Dr. Sylvan Lee Weinberg.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. Was the former president of the American College of Cardiology. I'm going to read a quote to you guys. Low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet may well have played an unintended role in the current epidemics of obesity, cholesterol abnormalities, type 2 diabetes, and metabolic syndrome. Now listen to this. Diet can no longer be defended by an appeal of the authority of the prestigious medical organizations.
Wow.
What he is saying is that we can no longer blame diet as the reason for your high cholesterol, diabetes, or even things like your obesity. What you hear from him is he says the low-fat, high-carb diet is actually what's been causing the problem. So here's what we mean by that. A lot of people say, well, in order for me to avoid my heart health risks, my doctor said, get rid of the red meats, get rid of all the animal products, stop eating eggs, and go super uber vegetarian and eat nothing but these vegetable based fats, right? So like corn oil, Wesson, canola, Crisco, which is basically diesel engine lubricant.
Disgusting.
If you don't believe me, look that up. Crisco oils were developed by a gentleman back in World War II because they had to figure out how to make a smokeless oil so that submarines wouldn't overheat and put smoke into the closed environment and kill everyone on board. So this guy figured out that vegetable-based oil products could could lubricate and not smoke. So we were finished with the war, and we had so much of this stuff laying around. They're like, well, it is made out of vegetables, and you technically could eat it. So we need to somehow figure out how can we use this.
Let's mass
and
sell
we
it to the
started
public.
selling it not as Crisco, which was animal lard,
Yep.
but it was as this kind of like substitute vegetableized version of it. And now it's become the mainstream of what everybody uses. So just hear the logic, right? Cardiologists are even saying like, nope, cholesterol has nothing to do with your heart disease risks, nor does the dietary cholesterols you eat. We now know it is a response to the amount of toxicity and inflammation in the body. So I know you're going to be like, what the? But my doctor says I have to keep, they're uneducated, undereducated. They're following the research of the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, which blamed all this stuff on animal fats.
Right.
So look, if you want more details, I have a whole chapter, like an entire chapter in our ebook about does cholesterol actually cause heart disease? And it goes into the whole myth. It even goes into the fact of like all this stuff we used to do, the stents and all the, the unclogging of the arteries, and how even that was proven not to fix heart disease because it's not a cholesterol issue. So if you want the ebook, it's free, 704-906-2094. We need the word heart, your name and your email texted over now so you can get access to that.
You know what's interesting? We were at a conference a few weekends ago, and one of the speakers, he said something really profound, and it related directly to heart disease and directly to stenting.
Yes.
He said, he asked the audience, when is the only time that a patient should get a stent put in? Because all patients are coming in saying, oh, my medical doctor, my cardiologist, they said, I've got this blockage, this coronary blockage in my heart. They want me to go and get a stent put in just to prevent any, issues in the future. Even if you get the stent, it doesn't mean it's going to prevent the issue. So when is the only time you should get a stent in? When you're already in the ambulance because you've had a stroke or heart attack. That's the only time that you stent. Otherwise, there's many other things that you should do first that's going to help lower your risk of having some sort of cardiovascular event.
Yeah, and think about so think about this. Man, I'm not trying to point fingers, but a lot of you are taking this medication, either a statin or a cholesterol drug, because you think it's lowering your risks of having some sort of heart event. So listen to this. A huge study, 541 hospitals across the United States. They had 136,905 people admitted for heart attacks. So they actually were like, oh, my heart. It's 137,000 people rounding. Now listen, ready? Out of all of those people, 75% of those had normal LDL cholesterols. So hold up. 137,000 people having heart attacks. 75% of them had normal cholesterol. 50% of them had regularly healthy levels of LDLs. Okay, so like even considered perfect. So you have normal, in quotes, which would be medicine saying okay. 50% of them had functionally perfect LDL cholesterols, and only 10% of them had good cholesterols, over 60.
Right.
So what this massive study showed is the more important number, if you were to look at your cholesterol scores, is not how high is the total in the LDLs.
Yeah.
It's your HDL score. Now here's where I want to rip my hair out. 39 or greater is considered okay medically. But here's the deal. They don't say anything about what it should be in the research. Now, the research shows 60 is the minimum you need to prevent the likelihood of having a heart attack.
Yep.
So if you're at 40, your medical doctor's going to be like, well, your good cholesterol is okay, but your LDL is over 200, so we need you on a statin now. And the problem is that you've got to take these kind of cholesterol glasses off. Stop looking at cholesterols and look instead at ratios between total and good. And then even more importantly, the sizes of the molecules. Yep. Because we talked about this before. Could I have an LDL of 120, which is too high, and a total cholesterol of 225, which is too high, but a HDL of 99, which is like rock star
Amazing.
level,
Yeah.
and have lots of LDL large particles and be totally 1,000% not at risk for a massive heart event? Yes. Or could I have a total cholesterol of 225, an LDL of 125, have an HDL of 39, and have a ton of small particles, what are called the tiny, cholesterol particles, and be at a massive risk for heart disease?
Yeah, those small particles are what lead to the clots, what leads to the plaque buildup.
For the sake of time, because we've got 25 minutes left, we still have to talk about what's the at-home tests, what's the secret test your cardiologist can run that's way better. Like I think it's 2,000 times more accurate for heart disease.
Yep.
And we got to talk about the cat in the bag, right? The nerve connections. So just know this, right? If you're on a statin, I'm going to tell you outright, you've been lied to with the biggest lie on the face of the earth. And yet you believe the lie because otherwise you wouldn't be taking a statin. So that's the hardest thing. It's like you wouldn't do it if you knew what we knew. But now that you know what we know, will you take an action to make a change? I'm not saying stop your statins, immediately go dump them out in the toilet. Download the ebook, learn everything you can about naturally fixing the reason for the elevation of cholesterol, which is the toxicity and the inflammation. And get this, your statin is only making your toxicity and your inflammation worse, which is why most people are like, well, they keep upping my dose.
Right. And we just talked, this study, it doesn't mention whether the patients were on statins or not, but it doesn't matter. They had a normal LDL, which means that it was either unmedicated or it could have been medicated.
Oh,
and if
man.
they were medicated, oh my gosh,
You hit
the
the nail on
statin
the
didn't
head.
do anything to prevent that heart attack.
Can you be medicated with normal cholesterol? I'm putting quotes, normal cholesterol, and still have a heart attack?
Absolutely.
75% of the people who have heart attacks annually are like that. Yet only 10% of the people with heart attacks had high HDL levels.
Yep.
So they're basically showing HDL is a more specific cholesterol marker for heart disease if you're going to look at that. But now, how about this? What could we teach them so that instead of looking at cholesterols and instead of looking at C-reactive proteins and all these kind of things, which are not specific, they help, but they're not specific. Yeah. What is like the definitive test at home that someone can do that if you run this test and it's slightly high, you're at massive risk for heart disease? I'm talking massive. And why does this test tell us more about heart health than any other test?
You're talking about somebody's A1C.
Yeah. So I don't know if you know this or not. You don't have to go to the lab to have an A1C test run. A1C is a marker for the amount of hemoglobin in your blood, ready for this, that is packed with sugar, ready for this, so that it can't carry oxygen. Now, I'm letting the cat out of the bag a little bit, but why would an A1C score, which, my God, you can buy these A1C monitors from, your local pharmacies for what, $53?
Yeah, $50-$60.
And if that marker comes back high, I'm telling you,
your
red alert for heart
high.
disease. Because what was the original cause of the blood pressure issues in the first place?
Yeah, it was the inflammation.
From the lack of oxygen.
Exactly.
From the fact your cells can't carry the oxygen.
Yes.
So think of it like this. A red blood cell that's coated with sugar is a precursed heart disease marker. And what do these numbers mean? Like walk me through this. If I go online, if I download the ebook and I get the cheat sheet with the answers here, and I run this A1C test and I see 7, what does this mean?
Right. 7 is red alert emergency.
Because I'm full-blown type 2 diabetic. And I don't realize that diabetes is a precursor for heart disease.
Right.
And I don't realize that diabetes is metabolic acidosis and all the above. Now, what if it's like 5.5? What would that mean?
That's okay, but you're halfway there already. And
so wait, like red alert,
right.
like you're already at risk. So what do we want to see? Like to have no risk whatsoever, we need our A1C less than what?
Less than 4.5 or between 4.5 and 5.
Now, this test is, how do you do this? Like walk me through how you do this test.
Yeah, it's a super basic test. You're going to be able to buy it, take it home. You're going to pull it out. You're going to put the strip in. You're going to prick a little piece of blood. You'll have the syringe to get a little bit of blood off of your finger. You wipe away that first amount of blood because that's been contaminated. You push into your finger to get a little bit of new blood to pop out, and then you put the strip once it's been I'm missing the word, but once it's ready to go on the kit,
connected to your device,
to it, thank you, and you'll get the blood into that strip. It'll take about 10 seconds or so to read, and boom, A1C. You get to know it. And you can it's not just a one-time thing. You can monitor this over and over and over again. So instead of saying, I've got to wait for my annual medical review, for my medical doctor to know, is my diabetes progressing? Is it improving? I've done nothing for it. I'll just hope and wait for the best. Now you have the opportunity to take your health in your own hands and make a change and test.
We have for you the device that we like. CVS has it, $53. We have for you the cheat sheet guide at the bottom so you can figure out. But I really want to hammer home this concept. If your A1C is anything north of 5.4, you should be going like, oh God, I am not oxygenating my blood, which means I don't have a lot of oxygen in my cells, which means I have a lot of carbon dioxide in my cells, which means I'm becoming acidotic, which means I'm at massive risk for heart disease. Exactly. You can find this stuff easy yourself if you know how to look for it.
We got to add to that, which also means that you're inflamed. That inflammation is going to lead to damage to the blood vessel walls.
Nailed it.
That damage is what's going to cause white blood cells to become pus and have to try to coagulate and mix together and become like a Band-Aid to those blood vessel walls.
And then what's attracted to that?
Now we've got these small cell or small size cholesterol molecules that are going to pack themselves in against that white blood cell pus. And before you know it, you've got this massive plaque that is blocking blood flow in one of your arteries.
But here's the, I'm gonna ask you a question. Is that a bad thing to have an artery be blocked by cholesterol?
Well, no, it's a very protective mechanism so that, like you said, it's a closed system.
Yeah.
We got to keep that system closed, and your body is the best at keeping that system closed.
So I should actually somewhat jump for joy that I have plaque in my arteries.
Right.
As long as I realize that's a red flag alert for you to do something about it so your body naturally gets rid of that plaque.
Exactly.
But I read a study that actually said the human body is so smart that if you had a 90%,
almost a full blockage,
say a 99% blocked whatever artery in your heart will actually grow collateral, meaning side arteries around the blockage, and you will bypass yourself for the sheer sake of keeping you alive. I mean, my God, heaven forbid. But the doctors are like, that blockage is going to shut off the blood flow, and we need to go in and rotor it out and put a stent there because evidently you've got a collapse of the vessel. So we'll just keep it open and we'll use our technology to keep you alive.
Right.
In fact, they've shown the stents do nothing to decrease your risk of future clogging or blocking because it makes sense. You're not fixing the problem.
Right. And I read a study that was outrageous. It said something like some super high number. I think 89% when somebody was having a heart attack and they went in to then try to, save the heart, clear the blockage, whatever it was. There was already those collateral bypass artery highways. Your body had already made them. The patient's body had already made them. And they're called an anastomosis. And those anastomoses had already been created, and the body was already working. The heart tissue hadn't died yet because it had that bypass system. So like you said, that stent is about to do nothing for that person.
Yeah. So we talked about cholesterol and how you shouldn't talk about it anymore. We talked about blood pressure
Put bluntly.
and how you shouldn't talk about that anymore.
Yep.
But you need to know these things because they are symptoms of the underlying cause. Let's talk real quick about the actual medical tests. Like if you're really truly worried, like we have a lot of patients who are like, yeah, but Dr. Ernst, you don't understand. Like I've got a family history of heart disease. My dad died when he was 46. I'm 44. Like what if? My dog had heart disease. My cat had heart disease. Like you don't understand. Like it runs in every single person in my family.
Yeah.
Okay. There are some reasons for that, typically because of all the stuff we talked about. But if you're going to go and ask your MD cardiologist for the best test ever, would it be blood pressure and cholesterol? Or is there a better test? And can you explain this test to us?
But see, and here's the thing. I want to preface this by saying a lot of the times, even when blood pressure and cholesterol aren't improving medically, what does the medical doctor or cardiologist want to do? Okay, we're going to go do a nuclear stress test. We're going to do an echo.
Or some sort of like a sonogram where they go in and they look around ultrasonic waves, etc.
All of those things in the research not proven to help you detect or prevent a heart attack or stroke.
Yeah.
So the one thing that you can get is you want to get a calcium score. You want to get a calcium score of the plaque inside the coronary arteries. Okay. And so that's done through an EBCT, which any local radiology, like all the major radiology departments in any of the major hospitals or even some of the private ones are going to have an EBCT machines, especially in any major city. So it's not hard to find. And you can run this EBCT test. You can do it year over year. It's really cheap, actually.
Do we know what this thing stands for, EBCT?
I know the CT is computed tomography. I actually don't. What does the EV stand for?
I don't know either. It's a fun one. They only give it to us as the abbreviations.
Yep.
It's got to be some sort of like.
I assumed electron beam computed tomography.
There you go. I would go for that.
But I'm not 100% sure about that.
So
to be honest.
basically, it's like
it
they
measures
take
the plaque
a ton of
arteries.
microscopic X-rays of your heart.
Yep, all these little slices, 256 slices
to get a three-dimensional model of your heart.
Yep.
And then they're looking to see how bright the white signals are within the vasculature of your heart.
Right. That's where the electron beam part comes in.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure.
Because, for example, if I have a really high calcium score, what does that tell us?
Yeah, if you have a really high calcium score, that means there's quite a bit of plaque that's there in the arteries, and
that's
very coagulated,
stiff,
and
right?
It's stiff, and the artery is not functioning well.
Yep.
And so when it comes down to it, and so let's just be frank, a high calcium score on an EBCT is anything above 300.
Correct.
But now, can you be someone that has a calcium score of 600, 700, 800, and you haven't had a heart event yet?
Absolutely.
Yep, that's possible
Absolutely.
because that's the genius, that's the innate intelligence of your own body. But what's really going to define your risk for having a heart attack or a stroke is the annual increase in that calcium
there we go.
score.
Yep.
Right? So if you have more than, get this is the most important part of this whole thing. If you have more than a 14% increase year over year of that calcium score following an EBCT, that is going to drastically increase your risk for a heart attack or stroke.
So let me ask you a question. You said 14% or more on
Yep.
an annual cycle. So if I get my first heart scan and I'm at 300,
Yep.
it should raise an alarm to say,
Yep, things
there's
are
a
going
lot
in the wrong
of calcium
direction.
in your heart.
Lots of inflammation.
So what's 14% at 300?
That's 14 times 3 is 28,
He's
42.
really good with math. I'm putting him on the spot. So I'd have to have a 42.
342.
Yeah, so if I come back next year and it's 306 instead of 342,
Yeah.
even though my
it's
calcium
above
score
300,
went
yep.
up, I'm still less than 14% rise, so I'm
Right.
okay. Now, in a perfect world, you could be 56 and get a calcium score of 0. How would it come back 0? Well, there's no plaque at all, so there's no calcium to be stuck to the plaque.
Right.
It could come back at 3, and it's like, oh my God, like, oh, phenomenal.
Yeah.
But if it comes back super high, I don't want you to think that means you're a ticking time bomb.
Right.
Does it get worse annually more than 14%?
Because here's the peace of mind thing, right? So the peace of mind is if it's not more than a 14% annual increase, there is essentially a 0% risk of having a heart attack or stroke in the future. So as long as that absolute risk goes to 0, as long as that increase of your EBCT calcium score is less than 14. And here's the cool thing. This test is super cheap. You can pay for it out of pocket. It's about $250, and that's going to vary around the country. Or if you go through insurance, your insurance will file it for you. It's about $50.
Yeah, 49 something, especially sometimes, and listen to this, a lot of cardiology clinics during Heart Health Month, which is generally February. I don't know why we pick February unless it's Valentine's Day, maybe, who knows.
Yeah, sure.
But a lot of them will run specials for non-insured patients, or it might even be like a $0 copay. And I'm telling you, you've got to get one of these run, okay? Partly because just like we talk with women's health and we say like, hey, a thermogram needs to be done simply so we have a baseline so that we can compare the changes annually. Just like we say x-rays of your spine so we can get a baseline we can compare your improvements. You have got to these days get an EBCT of your heart to be a baseline. And then if it is beyond 300, there are things you can do that can potentially lower a calcium score. I know it sounds weird, but if we do all the anti-inflammation, if we do the detoxification, if we work on the anion gaps and we increase the oxygenation of a cell, the inflammation goes down and your body's going to go like this. Well, I don't need all this plaque to hold these leaky vessels together. I want to let that sit in. I don't need the plaque to hold the leaky vessels of your heart together.
Yeah.
So what that does is it gives you the ability to say, you know what? You could potentially keep or drop a calcium score year after year after year.
Definitely. And last point about this EBCT calcium score test. If you've ever been told, you need to do a nuclear stress test to figure out what's going on with your heart, that is 40 times more radiation than the calcium test. 40 times. So you have a better test that is more predictive of if you're at risk for a heart attack or a stroke. It's cheaper to do it year over year over year so that you can know what your numbers are and have that peace of mind, and you're getting way less radiation into your system.
So hold up, let me ask you a question. If my cholesterol is high, what percentage likelihood does that tell us about your heart? Zero. Okay. We know that if you have diabetes, so again, if you're a diabetic, the research says you're like 200 times more likely to have a heart attack, just so you guys know. Now, why would a diabetic be more likely to have heart disease? They can't bind oxygen to the red blood cell because the hemoglobin A1C is high.
A1C is high.
Because they're in metabolic acidosis, they have a ton of oxygen in their blood, but not in their cells. They have a lot of carbon dioxide in their cells and not in their blood. Their anion gap is shifted and they're acidotic and they're inflamed.
Woo!
Now, if your calcium score is like in the thousands, I think, don't quote me, it's 2,000 times more likely to have a heart attack than even. So guys, like, the newest of newest tech that we have today is basically saying echocardiograms, sonograms, nuclear stress tests, cardiac stress tests, cardiac markers, all that stuff doesn't tell you anything about your likelihood of having a heart attack, whereas this calcium score is so much more predictive.
Exactly.
If you're growing faster than 14% annually, you're taking time bomb. And how easy. You get a simple scan of your heart, and it gives us a reference to what's going on. Okay, so a couple things real quick. Got to download the ebook. You can hear people texting in like crazy. I'm hearing ding, 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 ding because we forgot to mute the phone. So it's working. 704-906-2094. You've got to get the book. We have the guidelines, the issues behind cholesterol. Now let's talk about this thing that I want to make sure we really hammer, your nerve-heart connection, because no one's talking about this, and how the real way of also finding out cardiovascular heart risks isn't just the calcium scores, it's the vagal nerve score. So talk to us about this. How does the vagus nerve have anything to do with the heart?
Yeah, well, the vagus nerve comes out of the brainstem, so the base of your brain, way up here, the top of your neck, and that vagal nerve is the rest and digest. It's the main functioning nerve going to your heart. It's the signals to your heart that tell it to slow down, speed up.
Yeah.
And now, what's cool about the vagus nerve is it sends all the signals to slow down. But in order for your heart to speed up, you need less vagal response before there's any other neural input.
Yeah, so you're basically
the vagus
saying,
nerve
like,
has total control.
Less brake makes you go faster.
Right. Exactly.
And you know, your body's always on the move. So again, think of a car that if you have it in an idle, even I don't want to say a rough idle, but even a standard idle, as soon as you let off the gas, the brake, the car is going to slowly start moving forward.
Yep.
So your vagus nerve is always at this tone of like, hey, heart, slow down. Like, you got to slow down, because a sympathetic tone signal to the heart's going to be speed up, always.
And let's put this in some terms that might be easier to understand. Let's go back to the heartbeat per minute conversation we were having before, where we said, oh my gosh, anything above 100 is now non-resting.
Yes.
So if your resting heart rate is 100 beats per minute, let's say, to get the point where the vagal system now is not having to put so much. So when you start to exercise and your heart rate increases, we said we have to just take that foot off the brake. The vagus nerve has to slow down. The vagus nerve doesn't truly slow down to its maximum capacity until about 110 to 120 beats per minute.
Yeah.
So if your resting heart rate is 100 beats per minute, but you have to get your vagus nerve, you have to to really get the brake off, take your foot off the brake, you have to get to 110 beats per minute. That's only a 10 beat difference from you always being in this overdrive, fight or flight, sympathetic, oh my gosh, I'm always running, I'm always stressed, I don't know what to do, I'm about to freak out mode. 10 beats per minute, that's all it is. So that's how important the vagus nerve is to the heart and to the rest of your body.
Here's the neat thing about the vagus nerve. We know for a fact it's connected to the heart by some basic studies. There are multitudes of studies. They're electrifying rats and sticking wires around their vagus nerve and zapping the nerve to kind of like activate the nerve, which would take the brake off. And they're seeing changes in everything: blood pressure, cholesterol, sugars, diabetes disappearing, even weight loss. We also know from standard human studies, it's not old, but back in the day, there was a famous chiropractic study done at the University of Chicago where they used this technique called torque release, which is kind of a rotational, not just tapping something, but also twisting during the tap. And they were able to reset an atlas subluxation, which is the first bone in the neck that surrounds and protects the spinal cord and the brainstem where the cranial nerves exit. And watch this. They saw 14-point drops in systolic and sometimes 10-point drops in diastolic. And it lasted for 8 straight weeks. And when they repeated the study, they wanted to compare it to the medical advice, which was, here, take a drug. but it required 2 medications to affect the same drop as if the one adjustment. So the chiropractic profession, if done properly, this is not a, it has to be torque release, where it's not just a thrust, but also a rotation. If done properly and identified at the right level, you can see a drastic drop. Why? Because now the vagus nerve is relaxed and that brake kind of starts to apply properly, and it slows the heart rate down.
So if you're listening to this right now, you're like, oh my gosh, the vagus nerve. Well, how do I know if the vagus nerve is really a problem? Why can it be a problem? It's because, and you got to get the ebook. It's all in the ebook, but I want to break it down to the nitty gritty, right? The way that any nerve in our body changes the signals that are running through it for worse is that there's some sort of tension, there's some sort of compression, or there's some sort of torque on that nerve. That changes the normal signaling pattern, and now no longer can all the signals get through. Whatever
it's a lot like the tone, right?
Yes.
So like if I take a guitar and it's perfectly tuned and I strum it, it sounds great. Now, if I just go grab one of those wires and I decrease the tone by lessening the tension, instead of the E chord being in an E, it drops super down and you hear this, and it doesn't sound good because the tone, the tension on the wire is off. So aren't our nerves like wires?
Yeah. They essentially are the wires that connect our entire body.
So if an atlas that should be perfectly centered rotates and flexes or extends, you're going to twist and compress the vagus nerve, which is why torque release is so important, because you can't just go boom like a chiropractic adjustment would. You have to do this kind of rotational reset. Usually requires an instrument. And you can do a pre and post x-ray. All of the testing about the vagus nerve, guys, is in the book. We even have thermograms to show you like what you don't want to see. We even have x-rays to show you how do you know it's perfect. There's normal, there's abnormal. And notice we can do a before and after vagal nerve test to determine, hey, after one therapy session, did the space for the vagus nerve open? And as we functional chiropractors see that, we go, now we know your blood pressure is going to drop because we're clearing the nerve stress. We use the functional medicine to say, oh, you got an anion gap shift and your A1C is high and you're toxic. So if you start clearing all of the roots, guess what happens to your heart? Heal thyself, right? Heal thyself. Okay, we got 3 minutes before they're going to kick us out of the studio for the next show. I really recommend, like highly, guys, this is it. Like after today, the webinar is, next Saturday. So like
7 days away.
You've got to do this, okay? 704-906-2094. Call now, text the word heart with your name and email, and you get the ebook for free, okay? And you get the webinar for free. All right, if you're on our live streams somewhere, I think it's like around here-ish, and there's also a little guy there that will say how you can connect and subscribe to our channels. Just do it, all right? Everything that we do is free for the sheer sake of teaching you to become your own doctor.
That's right.
Anything else you want to say as we wrap it up?
It's just super interesting that, you can always do the things to change the cholesterol or to change the blood pressure or to change the heartbeats, but you really have to get to the root issue of what's going on. And when you change what's going on with the vagus nerve, when you change what's going on with the entirety of your nervous system, when you open up the body and take away the stress that's been applied, stress is just an accumulated thing. It's not just like you have this one stressful event and, oh my gosh, now the vagus nerve is compromised. No, it's something that's been going on for years and years and years.
And may still be repeating. How you sleep at night, the way you talk on your phone, how you sit at your computer.
Yes, so being able to identify how those stresses are affecting the one system that controls everything, your nervous system, identifying that and then correcting that, and that's corrected through a multitude of ways, all taught to you here in the ebook. That's what's going to give you the opportunity to heal yourself.
Absolutely.
That's the one and only thing, right? You can do all the tests. You can do the EBC test. You can know your calcium score. You can know how much plaque is there. You can know what your A1C is. That's all great. But those aren't the things that are actually going to help you heal.
Yep. So again, last chance, guys, 704-906-2094. Heart, Heal Thyself ebook, 20-something pages, 25, 26 pages of history, the breakdowns of the myths, how blood pressure, cholesterols aren't the issues. How do you identify them? The tests you can run to look for the root causes. We'll go super in-depth on this on the webinar next week. And I implore you, if you have a history of heart disease, which is basically everyone, If you have subtleties of high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, elevated blood sugars, which is basically everyone, you need to be on this webinar, and you need to get the ebook. So thanks for tuning in today. We love the fact that we get to come to you every Saturday here on Fox Sports Charlotte to teach you how to heal yourself. The Ask Dr. Ernst Show exists for one simple reason. We want you to become your own doctor so you can destroy disease, be set free from this merry-go-round of medicine and toxins, and truly heal yourself. If you'd like more information about our approach towards health, visit AskDrErnst.com. You'll see the links and whatnot on our video stream. And don't forget, we stream this every week. Like, we love seeing you and commenting with you and connecting with you. Facebook.com/AskDrErnst, YouTube.com/AskDrErnst. That is the key for you for your health. And we'll see you guys next week. Dr. Chris,
Yeah,
thanks for joining
having
us.
me. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Be blessed, guys.
Bye.